In 1984, the Kenyan government imported food aid to feed a starving nation. Kenyans looked at it and largely said no, not because they weren't hungry, but because it wasn't the right ugali. That moment tells you everything about what this dish actually is. Long before maize existed on this continent, Kenyans were already making thick porridge. From sorghum, from finger millet, from the grains they had cultivated and understood for thousands of years. The technique was already here. Boil, stir, farm it up, eat with your hands, share from one pot. The grain would change, the soul of the dish never did. Maize is not African. It came from Mexico, carried to the East African coast by Portuguese traders in the 1500s, grown near the coastal ports to feed their own soldiers. For over a century, it barely moved inland. Kenyans were still eating sorghum, still eating millet, the old grains held. Then, the British arrived, and everything shifted. British settlers took the most fertile lands, the highlands, the Rift Valley, and planted maize at industrial scale, not for Kenyans, for export, for the British starch market. And when they needed labor to work those farms, they took that too. African farmers displaced from their own land were paid poverty wages, sometimes not in money at all, but in maize. Here's the part nobody planned. The people took that maize, ground it on stones, boiled it in clay pots, stirred it with the same technique that their grandmothers had used for sorghum, and fed their families. The colonizers had a crop. Kenyan women made it into a meal. In the 1920s, the posho mill arrived, a mechanical grinder that made maize flour faster and cheaper than anything before it. Suddenly, unga was accessible, affordable, and on every market shelf. Here's the other irony. The reason we eat white ugali and reject yellow so fiercely traces back to the British export market, which preferred white maize. That preference was passed down through the mills, through the rations, through the recipes. We inherited it, then we owned it. By 1984, maize made up 40% of the Kenyan diet. When the drought struck, the government flew in yellow maize, cheaper, foreign, technically the same grain. Kenyans reduced consumption, substituted other foods, waited it out. Think about that. A crop that arrived on foreign ships, grown on stolen land, distributed as a colonial wage, had become so completely, so fiercely Kenyan that people would go hungry before they accept the wrong version of it. That is not colonization. That is alchemy. That is history. And that same spirit of taking something and making it entirely your own is exactly what I bring into the kitchen. Because ugali flour is so much more than one dish. My personal favorite now is called Ugali CHAPATI. 2 eggs, half a cup of milk, your ugali flour, and 3 tablespoons of wheat flour. And you have something genuinely delicious, genuinely nutritious, and honestly more practical than making a full pot of ugali for one person. Use fortified ugali flour and you're getting iron, zinc, and vitamins built right in. Want to go sweeter? Swap in some cake mix, add cinnamon, throw in some nuts. Same flour, completely different experience. The alchemy doesn't stop with history. It continues right here in your kitchen. So, what would you make with ugali flour? Tell me in the comment section below.